From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These SpaceBrains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, and welcome to SpaceBrains, the show where we joy watch sci-fi movies and then talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Hiya, tonight it's episode 70, which means it's a classic. And so the classic that we're looking at is 2001 sci-fi Donnie Darko. Now, you can have a look at this film as the original, the director's cut, and then the 20th anniversary, sorry.
It is the 20th anniversary right now.
And there is that version online. If you go on iTunes, Apple TV, whatever it's bloody called these days, there is a 20th anniversary. I think Prime is also doing the 20th anniversary, which is some sort of mashup of the two versions. So go check it out before we get in and spoil it for you. So in this episode, we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into the science. We're going to look at the narrative. We're going to look at some of the film language. And of course, the most important thing is finding out what Surrey thinks about Donnie Darko.
Of course. My opinion is the only one.
This film was directed and written by Richard E. Kelly.
No, not Richard E. Kelly. What are you talking about? His first name's James, but he goes Richard Kelly.
Richard Kelly.
He's a 1975 baby, so I know all about that.
Ooh,
he was only 26 when he made this film.
I know. And also, as a little tip, he spent 1999, so it came out in 2009, he spent the whole of 1999 meeting every single producer across Hollywood who said, this is the best script of 1999, but we're not going to make it.
Yeah.
Everyone said no.
No.
In 1999, every single producer said no to him. And it was a year full of rejection. So if you're out there and you're trying to pitch a movie, just remember Richard Kelly's experience of Donnie Darko. He spent 12 months meeting every single producer in Hollywood and they all said no.
Also important, however, to take note that it was a commercial failure in initial release.
It was.
But turn back now, because it's your spoiler warning. We're going to, and we don't want to spoil this movie for you.
No.
You've got to see this one firsthand. You'll probably come and listen to us, and you're going to watch it again. Maybe watched it 3 times. It's pretty good. It's worth doing. So, spoiler warning. Warning. Join back in once you've had a bit of listening, because we're not going to hold back.
And trust me, I had a listener the other day say to me via Messenger, the technology that's out there, saying that he'd been listening to a whole bunch of episodes. He was about to watch 2001 and he hasn't seen it.
He hasn't.
So he was going to listen to us talk about it, but he hadn't seen it. And I messaged him back and said, no, make sure you watch it. Because you should just watch 2001 Space Odyssey anyway. But I'm grateful that you want to listen to us. But hey, stop, listen, watch the film first, because we're going to totally spoil it for you.
So I think some of the films you probably can get away with just listening to us.
But that's a good one that you shouldn't. And this is another that you also should watch.
And how are you going to know which ones?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to listen to us and you hear it and you go, actually, I probably would have liked to
I probably would have liked it. They just ruined it.
Donnie Darko, definitely want to watch this one first, as with all of our classics.
So Donnie Darko is basically about a superhero called Donnie. I always like talking about that because Gretchen says, what kind of name is that? It's like a superhero, Donnie Darko.
Yeah, what makes you think I'm not?
What makes you... That's, perfect. So Donnie narrowly escapes a very bizarre accident at the start of the film, and he's quite a troubled teenager with this weird past that he's got, and he starts to get visions of a man in a large rabbit suit. I mean,
A large man in a normal-sized rabbit suit?
Yes. That's exactly right. I did not word that properly. And then this small man in a large rabbit starts to manipulate him to kind of do some weird series of crimes. This is not what the film is about. I don't know what I'm saying now. This sounds weird. Okay, what was your number one takeaway from Donnie Darko?
Holy moly, my number one takeaway...
Just one.
the one takeaway from this is that we don't necessarily all die alone.
Deep.
It's and if you've seen the film, because you stopped at a spoiler when you went back and watched it.
You went and watched it.
You know, Roberta Sparrow, Lady Death, says to him, whispers and says, all living creatures die alone. And this, of course, haunts Donnie. But one of the interpretations I get from the ending of this is that he doesn't die alone.
Yeah.
And again, something that I've really noticed that I enjoy about science fiction is when it starts to touch on the cosmological notions of divinity. And that's what this film does. And it's a very complex film. And that's why I'm impressed that this 26-year-old Richard Kelly came up with a script and directed this film, which so subtly introduces and weaves different layers of cosmological, metaphysical, psychological, and
it's deep
science. Like it's one of these films that I've watched it several times, and each time a little bit something else, strikes a little note to me. Like this time, I got the not dying alone at the end, and what that phrase actually meant. And I'll talk about that when we get into the
okay, that's really interesting, because straight away I can kind of think, oh, but hang on, does he die? But it is a film that you can't stop watching again and again and picking up something new.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
The story has it, the camera has it, the music, like there's so many different sort of elements that then some other piece of that puzzle comes at you after watching it for the 5th time, and you go, oh, I didn't even notice that.
So tell me though, and this is interesting, and I'm interested to see how this comes down into our 3-act structure, but is this a movie of hope, warning, or experiment?
I am going to hope, because Donnie Darko is an interesting narrative. The last episode we talked about being an interesting narrative of a 2-act structure. Donnie is definitely a 3-act structure, but we have a very unique protagonist of Donnie. Donnie is what you call an anti-hero. I don't mean, and that's why it's interesting to joke about him being a superhero. An anti-hero is kind of like a superhero. And don't get me wrong, an anti-hero doesn't mean antagonist.
Yeah, they're not a villain.
They're not a villain. An anti-hero is both the protagonist and the antagonist. That's the first thing to think about with anti-hero. The second thing is it means that an anti-hero tends to do behaviors in a story that is quite outside the realm of maybe what we ethically normally do with protagonists. So they might commit crimes, for example. So Donnie burns down a house, right? And they do things that the average Joe doesn't do. But the reason why they're an anti-hero is they kind of have to get to a point in the story where to basically solve the narrative, they kind of have to fight themselves. They have to kind of it's both the protagonist and the antagonist coming together, and they have to fight themselves. And this is why, to me, when I first saw Donnie, it blew my socks away, because I was like, oh, wow, this is a really cool anti-hero. We've got a teenage boy that is an anti-hero, and he's thrown into this life or death scenario, and then you throw in the sci-fi elements, and it's quite interesting. So to answer your question, I'm going around a really long way tonight, but to answer it, to me it's hope, because Donnie is an anti-hero, and which means he has to sacrifice himself to kind of save everyone else.
Yes.
Now, he could decide, it's one of these interesting things with an anti-hero as well, in the way that Richard Kelly has done this, is that even in the last 5 minutes of the film, and we have warned everyone about the spoiler, even when you get the last 5 minutes of the film, when I watched it this time, I really thought about it. There's that last minute, he could still decide to be selfish, and he doesn't. And there's that great moment in the bed where he laughs to himself as the jet engine squishes him. And to me, it's like he's come so full circle that he's resigned to give his life up for everyone else. Gretchen, his mum, his sister. He just totally, hands all that back over. And he's happy with that. He's totally resolved to the point where he's laughing at the fact that he's about to be squished.
And indeed, I do love the way that we're going along, and this guy, it looks like he's going on a path directly to a brick wall.
That's right.
Yeah, he has a gun.
Destruction,
He burns in a house. He floods the school. He picks up a gun. We did tell you about warnings and spoilers, just in case.
We're beyond that now.
It's too far gone now.
It's too late now.
And so you know something bad is going to happen. Like, as soon as he finds that gun, you're going, okay, because he's spiraling. Like, he's getting more crazy, basically.
Well, flooding the school is almost a little bit. There's
Prankish.
a little bit of prankish, whereas burning the house is pretty serious.
It's a bit more destructive.
You know, and then getting the gun, you know, it's all going towards
you can
this
see it's
doomsday.
heading towards some sort of doomsday.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and so, this is this whole anti-hero thing that you're going, but how is this going to resolve? And all the way through to the end, it's you can start to piece together why things had to have, why this chain of causality had to occur in order for this to become a heroic story.
Yeah.
Like, you realize that these bad things were necessary for the good thing.
Yep. And it's great. It's great. It's such, and that's the thing. Each time this time you said you watched this time, you picked up on something new. That this time I was really watching that end bit and going, yeah, he really does sacrifice himself, you know, like he really does, and he's happy about it, and
he makes a personal choice.
Yeah, like it's such a, like, I think maybe I'm noting that a bit more as my own writing and stuff, that he is making that choice, because he sits there in the car and you can see the sky opening up and the portal and all that kind of stuff. Now he could have just gone, nah, I'm not going to go to it. I'm going to drive as far away as I could. And he'd done all that destruction you were just talking about, but he decides to, you know, surrender to it, you know, because that's his. So it's such a great example, if you're a writer out there, of giving your characters the choice and then them choosing that path and the outcome of it, you know, and what the character thinks of it. In this case, Donnie is happy to surrender.
So tell me about the first time you saw this movie.
Ooh, well, it came out in 01. I think I saw it about 03. So it'd been out for a couple of years. Didn't see it at the cinemas or anything. And I was excited to see it. I'd heard through people I knew that it was this really interesting film. Again, it was sort of like part of that era. I was watching a lot of independent film. You know, that definitely was me wanting to be a filmmaker, trying to get as deep into these independent films. I think when I saw it sort of won some of the festivals and things like that. So it was kind of like, oh, okay, this is something that, sure, didn't do well at the box office, but it sort of, people were talking about it, and it didn't disappoint. It was one of those films I remember watching and being sort of, you know, when you watch a film and you're just kind of like on the edge of your seat the whole time, or you're just totally riveted by, oh, what happens next, you know, and then you watch it and it's one of those films that the next day you're thinking about it.
Yeah,
you know,
I
it
think
resonates with you.
That's a real cult, because this is a cult movie as well.
It became a cult classic, yeah.
It's a cult as well, and that's one of the definitions I use for the cult movies. Is it's the movie that, like, I watched. You watch a lot of Hollywood summer blockbusters, which are not designed to be great cinematic masterpieces. They're designed to be exciting, thrilling, draw cards,
definitely
events.
Yeah,
they're not really, you know, you don't sit here and talk much or debate much about them the next day. You know, like you don't. Your Avatar is a fantastic film, amazing.
Yeah, visuals,
beautiful. But days later, you're not kind of debating anything in it. You're just kind of going, oh, that was a really cool film.
Yeah, it's kind of like a roller coaster.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster,
you know, like it's great, it's fun, it's exciting, it's energy.
I watched Spinal Tap. This is Spinal Tap. So this is the mockumentary, right?
Yeah.
And
spoiler warning.
Yeah, I watched the first time and I was kind of like, oh yeah, it's kind of amusing. Like it, you know, I'd heard a lot of good things about it. And I finished watching it and going, okay, whatever. I wasn't really particularly struck by it. But then I remember going back to school, you know, I was watching the weekend on the Monday, and, you know, a friend asked, did you see Spinal Tap?
Yeah.
And I went, oh yeah, I did. And then suddenly like this little like scene popped into my head about the little person dancing around the miniature Stonehenge because they had screwed up feet and inches on the specification. And I just could not get out of my head, and it was infinitely funny. And then we started bouncing these scenes and lines and everything off each other. And it was just like, that's when I realized, I went, that was a really good film. That was really funny. And then sure enough, I watched it again later on when I was older. And it's, again, noticing there's actually all these little scenes and phrases and sayings that you hear people use commonly. I mean, the whole turn it up to 11.
Yeah.
That is from Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
And there's just this scene, which when you watch it, but you talk about, and Donnie Darko is the same thing. You watch it, I watched it the first time. My wife had seen it and she said, you've got to come see this film. She wasn't my wife at the time. She's a keeper. She takes you to see Donnie Darko.
Oh, that's right.
So she took me along and we watched Donnie Darko in the cinema. It was the 2004 director's cut release, which is why we saw it in the cinema. And it was at the Astor. It wasn't like at a mainstream cinema, of course. And we went and watched it. And I remember getting to the end of it and I felt turbulent inside. I wasn't sure how I felt about the film. Like the music in it really captured me. And there were certain scenes and stuff that just made me feel... I don't know, like a teenager, there's just this feeling to it that made me really resonate. And I just kind of didn't know much about it. And again, likewise, a few days later, my wife and I sort of talked about it and suddenly parts of the film seemed to like leap out at me. And then we talked more and more and more. And then I realized that was a really good film. And that I think that's the cult one. So know you've seen a cult film when... After you finish watching it, you might be a little bit ambivalent, unsure. You know it affected you, but you're not sure how. It's when it's the 2 or 3 days later, if you have that conversation with someone and things just leap out. Like Princess Bride does the same thing. I watched that the first time. I was like, oh, yeah, that's kind of quirky and interesting. And then again, some friends at school, brought up the inconceivable, it's iocane powder. And then suddenly the whole sequence appears and it's just like, holy crap, that was great. Yeah, and Donnie Darko, that was my experience the first time watching it as that cult experience. Unsure. A few days later, suddenly realizing, wow, I'm going to have to watch that again. That's really good.
And that is going to be something that I think we're going to focus on some of the really main parts in the narrative, but you've brought up the interesting thing, which is the director's cut. So they brought out an original. It's about an hour and 50 minutes. And then the director's cut is like 2 hours and 13 minutes. The director's cut has some scenes in there which explain more about the time travel. Okay, so there's some text, there's some expanded moments to do with the actual explanation of the time travel. But beyond that, and there's also a couple other scenes that are in the film, but beyond that, it's pretty much still fundamentally the same film. I think the 20th anniversary, they've kind of done a bit of another mix between all the other two versions, and they've gotten it somewhere in between. I watched the original, as I said, and then, in about 2005, I sort of got my hands on the director's cut, and it was like, oh, wow. And so my experience of that was I felt the director's cut was better. Did you go and watch the original after you saw that your girlfriend take you to the cinema experience? Great. Oh, this is a great film. Did you then sit down and watch the original?
I've never watched the original.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So, because I will say, and we had it at the Black Maria Vinegar Syndrome night. Is that how they're called? I think I'm pretty sure.
Black Maria. What do they call the Black Maria?
I think there's vinegar in there somewhere. Anyway, they're a great
vinegar syndrome.
Yeah, they're a great collective that are playing some
Black
pretty
Maria collective. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. And they're playing some great films here locally in Perth. We went along to a sci-fi movie, which was fabulous. We might do that as a movie in the coming weeks, but it was great. Collective VR locally to Perth. Look them up. They're playing some pretty out there films and also having Q&As and chats and the audience was great, wasn't it? It was like we got to have conversations like you and I are talking right now. I sort of wish that we could have almost recorded those conversations. But so if you're in Perth, go check them out. If you're online, go check them out, the Black Maria Collective. On a side note, we talked to them about Donnie Darko. I brought that up to them that night. And it was contentious, the director's cut. And I remember a couple of the guys that run the Black Maria Collective saying, but the problem with the director's cut, it's like he's like explaining too much. And I will say I made this a movie that I played to students and I played them the director's cut. Now, most of the time most of my students had never seen or heard of Donnie Darko. And that's normal because they're not filmmakers themselves. They're not in the film world. They're
They would
new.
have been barely born when this was made.
No, we're talking back in like about 2010.
Oh,
so
okay.
they were born. But again, it is an independent film.
Yeah.
And but I remember this one group I had where 3 or 4 guys in the class were kind of into the films a lot more. And when I mentioned Donnie Darko and I said, we're going to look at the director's cut, it was the same thing. They were like, no, not the director's cut, the original. And I'm like, oh no, the director's cut's kind of better because he explains more. We get to know a bit more about Roberta Sparrow. It's not so hidden. There's a bit more, there's just a little bit more explained in it. And they were very much in the essence of, no, don't play the director's cut. He's kind of ruined it. So I do want to explore to you out there, if you've never seen this, maybe go watch the original. Maybe then watch the director's cut. If you really dink 'em, watch then the 20th anniversary. Go have a look at all 3 versions.
Yeah.
You can get your hands on them. I found the 20th edition is on Apple and I think Amazon. The and the original is also on Apple, I believe, and you can also probably get the director's cut a bit more in the world of DVD land.
I got it off Google Movies. And
You got it off Google Movies, yeah? Okay,
Yeah.
there you go.
And,
So-
I totally get the whole director's cut contention because there's a number of movies where they've done the same thing. There's been a director's cut, and some people go, like, I watched the director's cut, and I haven't seen the original, I have to admit, but I appreciate, the pages from the book.
Yeah.
I don't think they revealed much at all. They were kind of using quite arcane and occult wording.
Yeah.
Which is what I think added this extra layer that I enjoy, which is this brief entry from the physical into the philosophical and maybe into a little bit of the metaphysical. You're sort of wondering this connection, this thread between reality and unreality.
I can tell you, as someone that's seen both versions, in the original, it's a little bit more left up to air. Like, it's a little bit more left up, as in you do feel maybe a bit more confused at the end of watching the original. That's the only way I'd explain it, which I could then understand audiences going, oh, that's a bit of a weird movie. Like, I don't really get it, right? Like, unless you're someone that's a bit film savvy or into sci-fi, you might literally walk away from the original and go, it's too confusing. I don't really get it. Like, was he crazy or was it time travel, right?
I think, to be fair, the director's cut, and just to clarify, it doesn't do like the whole voiceover explanation.
No, it doesn't do that. No, so
what
what it does well, I think, is when you get to the book part and when Donnie's actually, like, there's a scene where he talks to his teacher about it.
Yes.
In the director's cut, in the original, he just talks to the teacher. In the director's cut, there's kind of the text and the teacher and the scene, with the bubbles out of the chest. And when you put all 3 together, it kind of explains it. In the original, they kind of do a bit of a voiceover in the climax of the film of them going, you need a vessel and a portal. And that, you know what I mean? And that's kind of from one of those earlier scenes. And is that then needed in the climax? No, because in the director's cut, he's got those kind of little excerpts from it.
Yeah.
But it does cause a bit of contention like director's cuts can.
They always will do.
So if you're out there, watch one of them. Let us know what you thought about it. We're sort of focusing a bit on the director's cut, but it does cover both bits. And let us know what you think is the better version. Why is this film a sci-fi, Surrey?
Sci-fi. Because you could have this as just an exploration into psychosis, like schizophrenia.
You could.
It has elements of that.
And I liked that when I watched this the first time, you could almost imply, well, is he just a bit crazy?
And
that's kind of cool.
The circular nature, though, of the plane engine appearing out of nowhere, and then the ending of him being crushed by it.
Yeah.
That is the science fiction element. The element there which moves it from being one schizophrenic talking to another, into being, no, there is an insight here not only into human nature and psychology, but also into the realm of what the world is and how it operates and where satisfaction and knowledge comes from. And that's what makes this science fiction, because it's not a magical element here.
No.
That's the description, and the explanation is one based in possible reality.
Yeah.
And if you took it out, it would just be a psychological film.
Yeah.
A coming of age,
Definitely.
a sad coming of age film about a boy who loses his girlfriend and then grieves in ways that he can't understand.
Yeah, definitely.
Which would kind of make a good film as well in itself, but it wouldn't be science fiction. So, but this one is definitely science fiction.
Yeah, I liked that. I remember watching it when I watched it the first time. It got a bit confused. I was a bit confused. I'm like, but if the mother and the daughter are on the plane at the end of the first version, then the engine always comes from that plane. Does that mean that they would have died, but then the engine comes back and squishes him, but then he's not squished, so therefore... Yeah, I don't know. Does he?
Yeah, so
you know what I mean? Like, it's the chicken and egg thing.
The engine is coming from the tangent universe, the universe that, as it turns out, never happened.
Yeah.
So, well, it happened, but it just stayed as a drifting tangent, not as a collapsing tangent.
That's right.
Which would have destroyed everything.
Yeah.
Which in itself, and this is what I love, as I said, you watch these movies and you get these extra bits because you're referring to this tangent universe and the end of the world, everything collapsing. You can look at it just from the point of view of Donnie Darko, where he finally finds someone that he has a relationship with and a connection with, who then dies senselessly.
Yeah.
And then also his mother and sister, with whom he has an odd relationship, also die. Like, that's the end of his world.
Yeah.
And yet... Yeah, and this is what I really like. And so now we're going, no, now he wakes up as if it's just this dream, as he realizes that if he survives tonight...
Yeah, all of them will die.
His world will end.
Yeah.
Or, the book kind of indicates that a black hole will basically swallow up the Earth.
Yeah.
But that's just an analog, to what he's feeling as a teenager if everything gets stripped from you like that. It's just, and this is one of those things in this movie that I love. Yeah. That just you more you look into this, you can see different ways of reading it, and it's and that's why you got to watch it a couple of different times, because then you'll pick up on, because people are saying things earlier on, like, what are they called, the enlightened, the manipulated dead or whatever, are acting as guides. And so there's things that people sort of say which almost drive Donnie Darko to do things.
Yeah, like sell a door.
Are required. Yeah, it's just, it's great. So tell me, though, what science fiction-y part did you like about this?
I liked the blobby things out of the chest. I thought that was a cool way of explaining... I mean, again, what we're talking about here is when you start diving deep into the film, and Donnie even raises this question to, I think, is it to the psychologist or is it the science teacher? Science teacher, where he says, if this blobby thing comes out of your chest and you follow it, we can't see it. But it's like, isn't that suggesting that you're already predetermined? It's that old debate, isn't it? It's like, if God has already made all the decisions, well, then we're just kind of puppets. Following the track. We're trains, right? Trains on the track. And we don't actually have a say. So therefore, why do we go through all this, like, pain then?
Yeah, well, what's with all the bullshit?
What's with all the bullshit? Like, if we're just on the track, well, then let go. Some people might even debate, well, you are on the track and just let go. Yeah. Anyway, right? The pain is just your mental... argue with your monkey mind kind of thing, which again this is the thing. You start thinking about this film, you go off. So the chest bubbly thing, I liked that as a visual element of, hey, yeah, we're fate is fate decided or not? Because then, of course, for Donnie, he follows that path, follows it up, and he gets the gun. He goes to the fridge. Frank was here. But then also deciding, no, that's not what I'm going to be doing. Yeah. So he kind of then breaks it.
He does. In order for him to... it's one of these fun things. He ends his fate by meeting his fate.
Yeah.
It's like... because he looks into Joni's gut worm, if we call it that, and sees the end of her journey is the portal.
Yeah.
And then look, let's get into that in Act 3 because that's just pretty amazing sort of stuff.
So we'll deviate to just for a minute. Any art, creativity, sci-fi stuff that you're doing at the moment?
At the moment, I'm writing some draft blogs for our website.
Yeah, excellent.
We talk about a lot of stuff here, and we're using terminology. We're talking about our definitions of science fiction. We're talking about joy watching.
Yep.
We're talking about classics, like what makes a film classic. Why would we classify it as a classic? So I'm writing some drafts up on these. So I'm hoping to get a bit of this sort of context up there. So if people are more interested in and don't want to listen to 70 episodes of backstory to hear it build this sort of stuff up, then there's sort of a shortcut way in there.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's like because I started a new job recently, so my time has sort of been altered.
Yes.
Spent more time sitting on a train with nothing
me
to do
too.
it right, and less time with time in the mornings and things to do other sort of stuff. But I mean that's pretty much it. How about yourself?
I had Harold the Plumber short film, little cast crew party. It was a bit of a thank you the chance to thank them. We had a little sneak preview of the film, not a premiere because obviously now it's going to go out onto the film festivals. But yeah, an opportunity to play it to them and say thank you for what they did to make the film become a reality. So put on a bit of food, a little bit of champagne. Had a red carpet photography experience for them. It was great to sort of have that as a closure because now it's like, okay, now it's going to go on the film festival for 12 months. You can move on to the next project, which the next project for me is the SpaceBrains Film Festival. When is that happening?
May 22, 2022. Oh my God.
There's so many twos in there. We didn't think of that when we chose that date.
Towards the end of May, you'll be seeing, if you follow us on some of our socials, you will be getting reminders of that.
Constant reminders. We just had the regular deadline. If you're someone that's actually a filmmaker, you've still got chance to make a film. There's still a good couple more months before the closure date, but we had the regular deadline, so now we're on the extended deadline. We're on the home stretch, so to speak. We have had quite a few entries, but please don't let that deter you. If you are a sci-fi filmmaker, enter your film, get it out there. If you need to make something, make it, and of course communicate with us if you've got any questions about what is sci-fi. That is the common question I do get, from some filmmakers and friends of filmmakers saying, oh, what if there's a sci-fi and a comedy? Is that a sci-fi?
Yeah, because I suppose some people might think, you mean it's got to be in space and like action thing? I was like, no, I mean, Donnie Darko, for example, definitely science fiction, totally a psychological drama.
So that's a perfect example. All right, so let's get stuck into the film. So we're going to talk about the plot. We're going to talk about some of the techniques as we go throughout, things like symbolism, narrative, camera, lighting, sound, editing, genre, social commentary, themes and messages, stuff that we've been already touching on, but we will expand a bit more on that. This was directed by Richard Kelly, as you mentioned. It did launch Jake Gyllenhaal career. It totally expanded him. He was a blockbuster superstar after this film.
Oh yeah, this was his stepping off point.
And apparently recently he's broken Taylor Swift's heart or something. I don't know. Someone at work was telling me all that.
Haven't we all?
I didn't even know they were together. But anyway, she's apparently made her first little short film, so I might have to check that out about the breakup that he's done to her. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, my wife watched it and she said she regrets it because she liked Jakey. And now she's like, oh, but he was not very nice to Taylor.
Oh, right. Okay. I might have to check it out.
I can't help but think that Taylor Swift needs to spend a bit of time analysing the people she chooses to have relationships with because her selection criteria seems to be missing some vital key. And it's not an uncommon feature in the relationships we choose. Sometimes we choose relationships with people based on what we think we need, but not what we actually need.
Okay.
And trying to find that is I suppose, the fun of having relationships.
So tune in next week for SpaceBrains therapy session.
Session.
Surrey will be taking us through what has gone wrong with every single relationship that Mark has ever had.
Well, the problem is you didn't use mathematics to solve for the ideal partner.
I was too much on the heart, Surrey. Too much on the heart.
There's an equation.
Like Taylor Swift. It's all about the heart.
It's a series of equations that you can perform, which will tell you anyway.
Tell you that Jake Gyllenhaal's not the one for Taylor Swift.
No.
And look, he also got his sister the role by just literally saying, "Why don't you cast my sister?"
As my
and
sister.
It's a low budget film, so they probably went, sure. So I just want to give there's a whole bunch of actors here. You'll know some of them. A lot of them have done different, because I've watched Donnie Darko a lot, I've noticed these actors. You know, they're not superstars, but they're in a whole bunch of stuff.
Like Drew Barrymore.
Drew Barrymore's a superstar. She's a superstar.
She looks exactly the same now.
She never changes.
As she did then.
No, it's incredible, eh? It's a chubby little chickies. I love them.
She's so gorgeous.
And, of course, the late Patrick Swayze plays the dodgy guy in this, Jim Cunningham. Don't you love that name?
Jim Cunningham.
He's cunning.
I did like Patrick Swayze. He's great.
And he's great. He's a great actor. And, damn it, I should have looked it up. The teacher, which I don't think I put her down there, actually. Bummer. You know the teacher, like the one that's all into Jim Cunningham? She's been in so much stuff, including like How I Met Your Mother. She's like Ted Mosby's mum. But she's been in so much stuff. Like she's a great actor. And she really is in this role like so well done.
Yeah.
And Seth Rogen's in it, right?
Yeah, I know. I only picked that up this time as well.
Yeah, I noticed that the last time I watched this was about 6 years ago. I was like, Seth Rogen? What? Like, yeah, I never picked it up before. And of course, so it's like an interesting one. We'll say, like I said before, Richard Kelly spent a whole year pitching this to all sorts of people. I'm just not Martin Scorsese, but Coppola.
Franco.
Even said to him, he read the script and then he quoted it back to him and said, "You've got a freaking script here.
You've got
but
a great
no
script
one
here.
is going to make this."
Everyone knows that Frank Coppola talks.
It's
a
too
bit like a
complicated.
vampire.
It's too complicated. But what started to happen was Ben Stiller was going to play Donnie Darko. Vin Diesel was going to play Donnie Darko. And these guys were like, penciled in, and then they said no. Mark Wahlberg wanted to be Donnie Darko, but he wanted him to have a lisp. Vince Vaughn said, sure, but I'm too old.
That's probably true.
In 2001, right? But it is true. But all those guys are too old.
Yeah, I know.
Even in 2001, they're all too old. And Jake was kind of cracking the market, so to speak. People were really interested in working with Jake for whatever reason, even though he hadn't really done much. But he must have been just one of those.
Well, it's his
hot
eyes
stars.
and his smile.
Yeah.
And
Anyway, he was keen to do it if. I just want to backtrack there. Vince Vaughn was interested, which actually made Drew Barrymore interested, and she signed on to be in the film.
Yeah.
And then when no one else was funding it, she was like, My Flower Films could fund this for like $4.5 million. I would be willing to fund it. So why not, And because, so isn't that interesting? What I always take from that, it's like, sometimes you just need someone to say sort of yes, Vince Vaughn, and that name on the bit of paper gets someone else, Drew Barrymore, interested.
Well,
and then the money gets shelved up, and then Vince Vaughn goes, actually, I can't do it, and he walks away, but it's too late now because the money's kind of up on the table.
Well, that's
really interesting, isn't it?
How Stop or My Mum Will Shoot was made. Because the script was presented to Arnie, and Arnie went, this is a dreadful film. But you know what?
Well, I don't know. Is it a dreadful film?
I'm going to tell Stallone that I'm going to do it.
It's a good film.
And so he says, I'm going to do it. And then Stallone, of course, hears that and gets offered the script and says, no, I'm doing it first.
I'm doing it.
And then Arnie says, obviously he does the film, and Stallone goes, that film didn't suit me. Which is more to the point, like a different actor probably could have
pulled it off more.
Better, but it wasn't really a vehicle suitable for Stallone.
Yeah.
And then Arnie laughed at him, apparently, and said, Sucker, I knew you would do that. You shouldn't have made that film.
And there we go, some Surrey Arnie impressions. It's not an Arnie film tonight.
was
There's plenty.
Stallone.
Was that Stallone?
No, that was Arnie.
I'm confused. It had a budget of 6 mil. Now, the box office doesn't do this justice because basically it made 7 mil, but and it was actually considered quite a flop. Even though when you look at that, you're like, well, it made its money back, which it did at the theatrical. It also had a lot of success at the film festival circuit. I think Toronto Film Festival gave it the best film award. It gathered some traction critically, and this is what this film did. What Surrey was even explaining before of his experience, that watching it and walking away talking about it, that's what started to happen with this film. So budget-wise, box office-wise, didn't do much. But 3 years later, it's generated enough, critical success, DVD sales, that then the studio has actually turned around and gone, oh, hang on, this has really got, this is a hot movie. People are talking about it, people are interested in it. We're willing to pay for a director's cut version. And so then they did that and they put that out. And like you went and saw it they must have done a theatrical release, probably very limited, but again, a theatrical release of the director's cut.
It is renowned as being just about I think it's the only box office flop that got a director's cut.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, because DVD sales are very strong, word of mouth. I had heard about it when my wife, then girlfriend, mentioned that we should go see it. I had heard about it. I'm a computer programmer. I wasn't at all seeking out or interested in indie films or unusual stuff. But even I had heard about it and heard good word about it. Yeah. It's just, it never occurred to me that it would be a film that I'd be interested in. The things we do for girls.
We do. We rock up to weird independent films.
She says, come along, you've got to see it. I won't take no for an answer. I went, oh, okay. I wasn't going to say no, but sure, okay.
The way you've just described that, I would have just been standing there with 2 movie tickets and a bag of popcorn, probably. Yeah, sure. Whatever you say. So let's break down maybe why that became such a cult classic through looking at the narrative. We normally talk about a 3-act structure. This film definitely has a nice 3-act structure to it. But as I said, the point of difference for this film, and we have not had an anti-hero film on SpaceBrains.
No.
We've had many normal sort of protagonist films. So this is definitely what you would call an anti-hero, which makes it interesting because to me, an anti-hero story, like I said before, is basically your protagonist and antagonist are the same person and they kind of got to debate themselves. And at the same time, they also tend to be quite an unethical, or they're breaking the morals down. Another really classic anti-hero, of course, is Dexter. If you've ever seen that, I don't want to kind of give spoilers, but the book or the TV series that was around for a while then, I think now they're remaking or whatever.
And let's face it, some of the Batman takes are a bit that way. I mean, Batman is bashing, he's beating up people for his own desires.
The trick in Batman is that there is always a villain that's kind of worse than Batman.
Yeah, he does always have the villain.
And what I picked up actually this time, Surrey, was I feel like Donnie is an anti-hero. There is no villain. There is no actual villain. But did you notice, we say save the cat, like the hero saves the cat. Do you think you could pick out his ongoing save the cat?
Shut up.
Yes. Because when I watched this previously, I never really picked up on it maybe as much. But this viewing, I was like, he's so nice to her, actually. Like, he really is continuously, he doesn't bully her. He bullies his sister, right? But he doesn't.
You're kind of contractually required to do that.
Brothers do that, right? Brothers, siblings, like his sister, they all bully each other, right? But he doesn't actually bully her when his mates are really terrible to her.
And he even asked them to lay off.
Yeah, he even so he's that. He's also smart in that he says things to people like the teacher. And he comes across very rational. That's another thing. Whereas then the teachers are quite emotional.
Yes.
So again, as an audience, you're kind of like, the world he is in is kind of complicated, which then on another level, it's like, yeah, that's what it's like when you're a high school kid. The teachers are wankers.
Yes,
they just are. Like when you start,
they know nothing.
because even the science teacher, like he has that good conversation to him, and then he like gets to it, he goes, "I can't say anymore because I'll lose my job." And you're like, "That's what they say." They say shit like that to teenagers.
I saw that scene and I always went, "Well, not in Australia, you wouldn't."
No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. But they do say that kind of shit. You know, it's like, and did you notice Drew Barrymore when Gretchen first walks? I mean, she's so nasty to Gretchen. Can you imagine a teacher saying to a girl, sit next to the boy you think is the cutest?
It's a bit rough.
Right? But teachers do that, you know? And that's the thing. Like, I never did stuff like that, but I always thought that's what, teachers do that shit. You know, and even the principal, like, you know, when he gets in trouble, he's like, let me just preface this, Donnie, by saying your Iowa scores are... You're going to be like the top student, right? Like you're going to be the top one, but kind of have to get you in trouble here, you know? Like, and that's what it's this hypocrisy of society to teenagers, isn't it? You know?
Love it. So let's do this.
Anyway,
3 acts.
this is what this film does because it just sends you on tangents. It does. It honestly does.
So yeah, tangent universes, which will collapse. Okay, so we do have 3 acts, and
maybe just do it quickly. Sorry.
The quick 3 acts. The first one, we're going to see some of a setup. We're going to have it end off with a catalyst, some sort of an event which actually drives the story forward. It's what makes you know what this story is going to be about.
Yeah.
Even if it's not what the movie is about, but it will put in your mind a question that requires an answer.
Yes.
And this is when you come across like a movie at about an hour into it, you know, Superman vs. Batman, where you think, what is the point of this? Like, there hasn't been... I haven't got anything in my mind telling me yet what this is about.
Well, I'll give you a quick one. We watched War of the Roses.
War of the Roses. Okay.
80s film, Michael Douglas, Kathleen Turner. It's kind of the third film out of the success of Romance in the Stone. And we watched all 3, right? We did this a couple of weeks ago. We watched all 3. The first one, Romance in the Stones, brilliant film. I reckon it's really fun. Great. The sequel's a bit pushing, strings. War of the Roses is not technically a sequel. It's a different type of story. But I will say, you get to an hour in the film before the war happens. And we basically turned it off because then it was just kind of didn't even feel very funny. And I don't know if it's like there's too much time that's passed that movie, but like you're saying, Batman versus Superman, it's taken too long to get to basically the inciting incident of the film.
To get to that point, like, you've got to have that feeling fairly early on.
Yeah.
Even if it's the wrong answer, the wrong one.
Yeah, that's right.
You've got to have that feeling that, this is the story.
Yeah.
And in this one here, so Act 1 finishes with that. Act 2 starts with the protagonist, and antagonist in this case, choosing to follow that story. Like they're swept into it.
Yeah.
Act 2, they do what you're going to expect from that.
Explore that, yeah.
It's going to explore that a bit. Partway through Act 2, halfway through the movie, that's where you're going to get, like, there's going to be a twist or a turn. It's going to be, we've sort of gone as far as we're going to go like this. Now stuff's going to change.
Yeah.
Often it goes bad. Like the classic case is it goes bad. In horror films, sometimes it actually starts getting good. Like, depending on your theme and your mode, your whatever. But usually it goes bad, and this is where the midpoint, it goes bad, and you start exploring some of the darker aspects of which come out of everything that's come before.
The consequences of the character's decisions to kind of play out that world now need to happen. So if it is... if it is like, I just got a new job, the consequences of that new job are now maybe negative. And so we see those negative scenes. In Donnie Darko, like, he's following Frank's messages. So the kind of scenes are getting bleaker and bleaker. Yeah, he's kind of heading to a destructive point.
Yeah, if you were to chart it on a bit of paper and extrapolate the line out, it will hit the bottom.
Yeah.
And usually what will happen is they'll bounce off the bottom.
Yeah.
And go into Act 3.
Yep.
So Act 3, because if they didn't, Act 2 would just kind of end with them.
That would be the end of the story.
Yeah. Like, no better off, no worse off, just kind of, in a bar with talking to each other and Bruce Willis sitting there doing nothing.
While his mate fights everyone else.
Yes, but Act 3 then starts off usually with some sort of, there's a bit of inspiration, something, there's an aha moment for the protagonist, and they go, oh, I see a way out.
Yeah.
Often the audience doesn't get told exactly what that way out is. We have like maybe our own ideas.
Yeah.
And there's sort of a plan starts enacting, it starts happening. There's a confrontation then with what is going on. You know,
We have to head to that climax.
The antagonist, the finale with the villain. There will almost always be some sort of wrinkle here, which says, you thought you're going to just do it the way you're always doing it, but here's this little thing which says, nah, you can't do this as you were before. You've got to have grown. You've got to have changed. You've got to learn something about what has come before has to affect this point now. Yeah. And this is not a formula. Like, so people think, oh, it's a bit formulaic. And some films do follow a very, Disney formula. There's a lot of Disney films and Pixar films which really, you lay them side by side and you go, they're basically the same film. Yeah. Characters have changed. And that's fine because it's very entertaining. But this is not a formula for how to write a movie or a story, but rather it's a formula for how to provide that build-up and then release of tension and a conclusion that satisfies, that leaves you thinking, that was a story that came to some sort of ending, and I feel like I have experienced something. Yeah.
And I mean, you say formula and that, but I think it is important to have that structure, because that's what I'm saying, like that War of the Roses, by the time you got to the bit that is actually the story, you've watched an hour, and then as an audience, we're going, we don't really want to watch anymore. Like you've put us, like that hour could have been deleted and converted into the setup, the 5 minutes at the start.
Yeah, so
we didn't need an hour.
Right?
Yeah. So
it's the structure.
The structure does need to be there.
Yes, you need that structure, and there are other structures which also
there is other structures. That's the thing.
But this one has been found to work. Look back at some of the oldest stories. Yeah, like even Bible stories. The story of Moses.
Yeah.
Not Moses.
Well, no, Moses is.
Probably. I was thinking of the Ark, Noah's Ark. We have the setup where we're told about, Noah and his righteous is the only righteous man. Yeah. And then we have a bit of a build up there where people are going, nah, you're crazy building this freaking Ark. What's going on? Yeah. And then we have, the flood. There's this Act 2 happens. And then, of course, it's like 30 days, 30 nights, 40 days, 40 nights, and it's looking pretty bleak. So we're hitting towards Act 3. Dove goes out, comes back with a branch, reaches the mountain, waters recede, finale. Beautiful.
Yeah. And also...
That's the same. That's the 3-act structure. Yeah. Follows this structure. And it's a Bible story that is told and retold so many times because it has this satisfying feeling to it.
Well, I was just going to say, on top of that, with that story, it works because Noah is the everyday man that then claims to have this higher power. Yes. The message from God, and everyone around him goes, but you're just like a farmer. You can't build a boat. You're crazy. So isn't that like the perfect example of an inciting story? Yeah, because exactly. It's like, in 30 days, guys, the world's going to flood. I'm going to build a boat. And you would turn to me, Surrey, and go, you don't know how to build a boat, Mark. You don't know how to
build a sandwich.
Like, that's right. Like, and I'm like, no, but I'm going to build this boat, right? Like, doesn't that take? And so if I've been given this inciting incident in my life. God has said to me, build a boat, Mark, and save all the animals, right? And don't worry about Surrey and all those other naysayers.
Well, I'm wicked, so
right? Yeah, no, but it'd be like, no, but they weren't all wicked. They were just town folk, right, around him going, but so he's trying to convince people to support him, like, come, the world's going to flood. And everyone's like, no, you're crazy, man. Like, you're crazy. And you don't know how to build a boat. You're normally like a shepherd. And he's like, yeah, but I'm building a boat. Like, I'm going to build a boat. And what, you're going to build a boat for all the animals of the world? That doesn't make any sense, right? And it still doesn't make any sense. But that's exactly what, like, it's the same with Donnie. Like, Donnie, you've shown that the world is going to end in 30 days.
Okay, well, let's hit Act 1 then.
Yeah. So, but it's the same concept, right? Like, you imagine if you said...
And as a...
I know
if Noah is ancient.
Yeah.
But it follows this structure.
Follows the structure.
And the reason it's remembered is because it follows this structure. So this isn't something that Hollywood has invented.
No.
It's something that has been refined and distilled.
Yeah.
Particularly by Pixar. Pixar movies are fantastic for this.
Yeah,
you watch them.
Toy Story is brilliant.
And when you get to the end of it, you just always go, that was a really fun movie to watch. It was so satisfying. And of course, when you break down all the plot points and lay all the Pixar movies side by side, you realise that they very strongly follow this.
They do.
They don't vary from it at all.
And they do it really well.
But it works so well.
It works, and they do it well because they have those exact moments in it. So, on October 2nd, 1988, in a small town of Middlesex, Virginia, intellectual but troubled teenager Donald J. Donnie Darko has been experiencing bouts of sleepwalking and wakes up on the road before cycling home.
Yeah, so the opening image here is it shows this town, and it shows what I like in this opening image is we see the mountains with all the trees. It almost looks prehistoric.
It does.
Like you can't see the town.
No.
And he gets up off the ground, has a bit of a chuckle.
Again.
Yeah, gets on his bike and heads on into town, like as if nothing's happened. And we get this whole then passing through town as he cross over it's clearly a small town.
Yep.
Very suburban and
a bit regional, right? Like a bit rural, yep.
And he rides in, and so this is establishing here that we do have this character, and I think it was important that he have a little chuckle.
Yeah,
it is. Rather than being distressed, it's like he's sort of going, huh, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, which again is one of the reasons why you said that a couple of days later you can be thinking about this film and going, hang on a minute, at the start he wakes up and chuckles.
Yeah, like why is it?
Does that mean he already know at that point?
Yeah, I know. It's
like that's the thing. Like this film is deep, man. It's deep.
It's very good. So that's the very opening image, and we meet all of the main characters.
We do. We have this great sort of like montage. One thing I want to touch on is throughout this whole film, there is songs that totally correlate. They're very sort of. They're not always, but they're very much lyrically songs that relate to the scene. So at the start, there's a song, I don't know the name of it, but the song is talking about fate. Following the fate.
So there are two songs. So the first one is in the non-director's cut, which is Echo and the Bunnymen.
Yes.
Which I don't know that song because I've never watched this film. The second version, which is In Excess.
In Excess, yeah. Love. Is it
Don't
love?
ask me what you know is true.
Yeah.
I want to tell you I love your precious heart.
I can't win.
Yeah. Never tear us apart. I've got to sing it through to get to the thing. Yeah, never tear us apart. So
that's the thing. But both of those songs, I think, are about someone's fate, really.
Yes. If we could live for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
But if I hurt you, make wine from your tears.
I know, it's confusing.
Which is foreshadowing, I think. That song is kind of foreshadowing, but it also talks about like his family unit. And it's a weird family unit, isn't it? Because
it is.
We see his little sister bouncing on the trampoline, and like the husband and wife have this weird relationship. In fact, his dad is very strange.
Yeah, it's kind of good, but again, this film has so many, I feel like the relationships in this film, like as I said, the teachers kind of seem like real teachers in the way that they talk to the students. The students being frustrated and they're being forced this stuff. Very much what it's like when you're a high school teenager. The way that him and Gretchen's relationship is very much what a teenage relationship is like. The way they talk to each other.
We've been going together for 2 weeks now.
Yeah. Why haven't we
and he's like,
kissed?
and then he stops and realizes he doesn't really know where he's going with this.
What do we do now, right?
And she goes, oh, you want to kiss?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. That's what I want. Isn't that what I'm supposed to do?
Oh, but his dad, though, there's that moment. Look, yeah, we're sort of jumping everywhere with this film. It's a classic. It's what we do. But his dad is sitting there having a beer, and Donnie's sitting out in the lunch thing, and Donnie says, Donnie asks his dad, am I just crazy? And his dad goes, no, I used to be crazy. And then he just goes on with something else. And then you go, whoa, how old? Like he says it in a way that's like, yeah, I used to be crazy.
Yeah.
And then he just continues on with nothing to do with that. And you never hear anything of that again.
Yeah.
Except you but the way his dad has behaved throughout, it's odd.
Yeah, but I think that's, especially now that I'm a parent as well, like even this scene at the start where the kids start arguing and like, you're a fuck ass, and like the kid, and then the little kid says fuck ass, and the dad just packs it, like, you know, he starts laughing over that. Like that happens in my house over dinner, you know, like someone says something that's so inappropriate, but again, it's funny because it's coming from this little kid. And also later when the dad, like when they are called in because he's argued against that teacher, the dad's like, yeah, I get that the system has sort of told you that you can't say that to a teacher, but really, you know, you were kind of provoked.
Yeah.
You know, and again, so it's like, again, but then when he's going to therapy, he sort of says to him, you tell the therapist everything. You just tell them everything. You know, like the dad's a really good dad in this, I reckon. Like, it's a really good dad. That is a really good dad role model, I reckon. That's what I've always strived to be, is the dad in Donnie Darko. That's my parenting
Did you
role
used
model.
to be crazy?
Yeah, still am.
Still am. Yeah, exactly.
That's the only problem with the dad. He's not
what
crazy.
though then is the inciting incident? So we've got this opening image.
Well, sorry, I just want to touch on one tiny little technical thing really quickly, is that in that montage, and this happens numerous times in the films, you'll notice, because it's unusual, the film speed goes fast and slow.
Oh, yes.
Right? And he does this throughout. Now, I think symbolically, that's a strong connection with playing with time.
I think also, and this is what I mentioned to my wife the other night when I was watching this with her, because she'd been asking us to do this episode as well. So
Right.
I watched it with her, is during those musical bits, that was how I felt as a teenager.
Yeah.
You almost have a soundtrack playing.
You do.
You're almost kind of thinking, even when you're not listening to earphones or buds or whatever the thing is.
Whatever the kids are doing.
But even when you're not listening to music,
Walkmans.
there's like I remember going to high school, and there's kind of a soundtrack overlaid
is,
with
isn't
it.
there? Yeah.
But for me, it was like freaking
Heavy metal.
grunge, and so it would have been like Smells Like Teen Spirit,
Pantera
and,
behind.
the Offspring, and a few of these other ones, some Pearl Jam in there. Like, but you get that same in my memories. It's like some parts of high school were really slow and drawn out. Like it felt like they lasted forever, and there were others which were whole 6-month periods which flashed. Who knows what happened? I don't know what.
And he does that. Like, this is the thing and we will quickly jump from this, but it's like that opening scene where we meet all the family. There's this montage basically. So it is a montage. But what I wanted to touch on was speeding up the camera, slowing down the camera, having the sound tracked over the top, so it's not really the sound effects. That speeding up, slowing down is weird, and I think there's a connection to time travel, and I think it's also, like you're saying, like the memory of it is a bit blurred.
Yeah.
And then there's moments, because this is the thing with memories, right? Like, you have your memory picks moments to retain, and then you retell stories over and over, and you're doing that consciously. But there's also memories that are retained, maybe the birth of your child or something, but it might be the moment that the baby pissed on the nurse, and that's the moment that your brain remembers. You don't really you know that you went through the rest of it, but it's that moment that's the memory for some reason, right? And it's the same with high school. Like, now the age you and I are at, like, you remember high school, and you might really be able to go back and take yourself into social science class and the teacher being a dickhead or whatever. But realistically, it's almost like a montage, isn't it? Like, there's a soundtrack, there's the moments in time. I can just imagine Surrey with the long fringe and Nirvana and
I did have a
coaster over the arm kind of idea.
Yeah, no, I don't know if that was really exactly what.
Yeah, man. We're talking about This Is Spinal Tap again. Yeah.
I was always a nerd. I was going I would have been carrying my school
My fringe is just over my eyebrows, ladies.
To,
just over the eyebrows.
And
I'm a bad boy.
I'm going to Dungeons and Dragons Club at lunchtime up in the history room because I don't like hanging around outside.
I don't like the sun. The sun. Anyway, quick, let's jump over. The inciting incident is got to be Frank waking him up, taking him out.
Yeah.
And then, but I think the inciting incident is the actual aeroplane engine.
Yeah. I mean, the inciting incident can be a drawn-out scene. And I think it was seeing Frank, because when you see Frank, you know you're being let in. Okay, there's something different has happened because
Yeah.
Donnie reacts differently.
Yeah.
Like, we know he sleepwalks. That seems to have been something that's happened to him before, and he's found it amusing. It's kind of,
I suppose, but do you know what? I think the inciting incident is Frank telling him that it's, what is it, 28 days, 16 minutes to the end of the world.
Yeah.
That's the inciting
it
incident.
is.
Yeah.
That would be the fulcrum
Yeah.
of the inciting incident. The actual scene, meeting Frank,
Yeah.
and then having the aeroplane drop on there.
Yeah.
After that, you sort of go, oh, the inciting incident's happened. Because it gives you that question. You sort of go, oh, okay, this movie then is about what's going to happen at Halloween. Because it's, October 2, 28 days. It's going to be Halloween. So something's going to happen at Halloween. We've told, we don't know if it's going to happen being caused by Donnie because he's mental.
Yeah.
Or it's being caused by some messenger, or you're
Yeah.
like, but that's
And
the
who is
question.
Frank,
That's now there's a story
Yeah.
that's happening, and the rest of this movie is going to give you that answer.
So it's a great time clock, isn't it? The old-fashioned time clock.
And throughout here, we get scenes, changes to a new scene, and it'll tell you the date.
Yeah, so the 20 days to go, and
28
17
days, 2
days,
days
and
to
all
go,
that,
yeah, and so on.
So it's a great insight in. The debate then is that real or not?
Yeah, and
Right? He
goes and talks to
questions
his
psychologists,
therapist, and talks about it.
Talks about it.
No, I don't think about fucking my family. That's gross.
I mean, again, it's the 80s, Christine Applegate. I mean, he's totally right.
Pip and I often say that, like, the kids piss me off and I say, oh, fuck them. And then Pip goes, I don't think about fucking my family. It's gross. And we have a little chuckle. And we get the second act then.
So this would be, sorry, before we jump into the second act, the B story, the love story, this is Gretchen.
Gretchen for sure.
Blake Schneider says sometimes the B story comes in before Act 2 and sometimes after Act 2. This is a good example that comes in before, and we get that scene that Gretchen is in the school. So the debate, we have him with his mates. As we said before, they kind of are bullies. They're kind of wannabe tough guys. We have the Seth Rogen and his mate, which are the real bad guys, real bullies.
They seem to be overaged.
Seem to be way overaged. And we also kind of the debate of like, is Donnie's a bit crazy, like he is, he abuses his mum, he swears back at his mum, he's very angsty. But like I said, the save the cat is there because he doesn't bully that Charita, and it's very obvious that everyone else does, but he doesn't actually bully her. So I kind of liked that, and they kept showing us that. They kept bringing that back around. So yeah, that's interesting. Anyway, then Gretchen enters. And we have that scene where see Drew Barrymore, right? Like, she's a good teacher. You can see like she's trying, the way she questions them, but then she's quite nasty, and that's like a real teacher, real English teacher, right? Like, if you were in that class, you'd be kind of, if you were Donnie and that you'd be like, she's a fucking.
Well, I often wonder though if these teachers really say, like, is this an unreliable narrator we're here? We're seeing this from Donnie's point of view, because for example, same with his parents. They've got a strange relationship. You're not sure what it is.
Like, is the version of the reality Donnie's version?
Is this Donnie's just seeing, oh, my parents are just like this? And the teacher's like, maybe the reality was she didn't say, go sit down next to the cutest boy. Maybe he actually literally said, if you saw an unbiased version, was, take a seat here. Look, there's some seats near these boys.
Well, yeah.
And then there was 2 seats available, and she chose the one near Donnie. And in his mind, it's like, oh my God, just told her to take the seat near the cutest boy. Like, it's sort of a...
And I mean, you're right in that could have been the reality, but the story of the film is saying that this is what happened. And I think that's what is being demonstrated from Richard Kelly is like, that's what it's like when you're a teenager.
Oh, it is, isn't it though?
Like that idea, like she walks, oh shit, they sent me to this classroom. It's the wrong classroom. The teacher goes, no, you're in the right classroom, honey. It's like, oh, would a teacher really be that brutal? Maybe not, but maybe they would. I know teachers that were pretty bloody brutal. I'll tell you what, both as a student and a teacher. So I don't know.
It's pretty good though.
It is great. I love it. And the parents, like the dad is unique, as we've talked about, and the mum just seems to be a little bit off with her wine, and she seems a little bit detached. But then I also feel like it's quite a realistic mum, you know, like at the brilliant thing in this is at the end when he is dead, like the dad's sobbing, the sister's sobbing, but the mum's not. And I think that's
relieved.
and I think that's also, but it's also very realistic. Like people don't necessarily just grieve out loud, screaming, crying, you know, like some people do, but they might not the other way, you know? So anyway,
it's Act 2.
Act 2.
We're gonna get some fun and games, and this is where we get the real meat of Donnie's relationship with Frank. So Frank is the bunny, and the bunny basically shows him, you know, to go flood the school. And coincidentally, they'd also read this book, The Destructors, which destroy, that Drew Barrymore's character introduced. But see, and this is one of those things where you're going, like, she's the guide. She's like, she is providing an instruction manual, and Frank is providing the means.
Yes.
You know, and in the end, you start seeing, okay, so if he didn't flood the school wouldn't have been cancelled. He wouldn't have walked home with Gretchen and had this relationship. Had he not, you know, had that relationship, then the whole ending of this would not have worked out.
Yeah.
And, you know, each of these destructive things he does is an act of creation.
Yes.
It creates this reality which allows for the final heroic act, if you like. But so we get about that. But when is the midpoint of this? So we said we had some fun and games where we start exploring this. You know, he starts seeing Frank and he floods the school, and we get, you know, Cunningham, Patrick Swayze's character, comes in and says, you know, fear, love. And I don't think we've met him at this point here. He doesn't come in to do his seminar until a little bit later.
The seminar, I think, is that the midpoint? Like when it's the actual seminar.
And things
or is
start
that
to go
still fun and games?
Get a bit dark there, where Donnie's got his knife tapping against the barrier.
Yeah,
and you're sort of going, okay, things are taking a bit of a.
I think so. I think that's that's the fun and games, because the flooding the school. You know, and there's the girls go, my sister said it's surrounded in feces. You know, that's kind of funny.
What are feces? Baby mice.
Baby mice, you know, like, and
oh, cute.
Yeah, and they're kind of, as you like, it's developing the relationship with Gretchen. Those guys will steal shit out of your bag, you know, like, and then they're with the boys, they're like grandma death, Smurfette conversation, and you know, like it's kind of. And with Frank, it's kind of like flood the school. You know, I definitely think by the time we get to burn it down in the cinema and his eye, that is definitely the second act, like the third act. Sorry, no,
the second half of the
second half. Like that's past the midpoint. So maybe the stage with Jim Cunningham is the halfway point. Yeah, I reckon it probably is.
He calls out the bullshit.
He does, because even before that, we've had the fear and love lifeline and debate. We've had the teachers. We've had, you know, Drew Barrymore kind of like debating. Again, this was save the cat. Like, you know, there's that moment where the teachers go, Donnie, you know what I mean? Like he's marking his bit of paper. He's Donnie. You know, and because you do get that, you get as a teacher, you can have those moments where it's like, this student shouldn't be here. They should be on with someone else.
Here we go.
You know, we've had also like the parent teacher kind of bullshit happen with Kitty. You know, like I think so. Yeah, I think when
told me to forcibly insert a book in my anus.
Yeah, so I think when Jim Cunningham gets up on stage, that is the midpoint, because it's trying to be like, this is the world, this is how we, you know, this is how you should deal with the world, and then Donnie does his big spiel.
Issues, yes. And, you know, I'm not afraid anymore. Yes, it's great. And then you see, like, in that little instructional video where Jim Cunningham slaps the kid on the butt and as he goes off. Yeah, I know.
Watch closely. I love like, yeah, and that cinema, like, so yeah, when you get into that, then past the midpoint, that cinema scene, you know, him and Gretchen go Evil Dead,
Yeah, Evil Dead is good.
And then when he walks out, it's also the last temptation of
The
Christ.
Last Temptation of Christ.
But Evil Dead, like he walks in as the Evil Dead, and then like they're watching, and then like Frank is like there beside them. I will say it's funny because I've noticed this sometimes in movies where they do that. They're in a cinema and they play a movie. Did you notice like it's the beginning of the Evil Dead, and yet Gretchen is like sound asleep? Which I'm a bit like, so they've just walked in and she's like falling asleep. I mean, my wife falls asleep during the movie, but that's like in the first, she's falling asleep during the ads.
She sat down and then settled in for a sleep. That's what she did.
That's what Gretchen did, which fair enough. Anyway, Frank rocks up. He says to him, watch closely, and he takes off his mask. That's right. Donnie says, take off the mask. Now, there's a little tip I never knew until I looked into it today. In terms of Donnie Darko, that Jake Gyllenhaal came up with the idea that Donnie, when he talks to Frank, it's like a kid talking into a blankie to their parent. And in the cinema scene in particular, it's really obvious. Like he's like, what happened to your eye, Frank? Like he puts on a really weird voice, and it's supposed to be like a kid talking through his blankie to this bunny rabbit.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting, isn't it? It's like
I do like that there is a definite
there's a,
when he's
it's
in the
kind of
bathroom,
a bit altered, isn't it? Yeah.
When he's in the bathroom looking all dark and mean, and then his sister disturbs him. He's like, he's got his head down, he's got that weird grin on, and he's looking up through his eyebrows.
He's kind of a bit like,
and he says, "What are you doing, Donnie?" And suddenly, boom, he's like, "Oh, nothing." Is a very
I'm just taking my meds.
But so we get down to the end, towards the end of Act 2, where things are going a bit dark. So he's got that gun, and he's burnt down this house, and we've discovered that Cunningham operates a child pornography distribution centre or something. And we get his mum then gets called away because the coach needs to appear at the arraignment because she's defending this guy.
She's a supporter.
Yeah, okay, well, sure, if you want to do that, but...
but again, what it's saying is she's supporting her own ideals, right?
But this then drags the mum and sister away.
Yeah.
So if he'd not burnt that house down, they wouldn't have gone, which means the jet they were on wouldn't have dropped its load.
I think the sister would have gone, but the mum wouldn't have.
Yes.
Which meant they wouldn't have had the Halloween party to begin with. So Frank and that wouldn't have come for beer.
Yeah.
So you'd wipe it out. But also then the mum wants to come back on the red eye.
Yes.
Which is the plane that loses the engine. Right? Whereas if Kitty, the coach, had just taken the girls, they would have just gone and then come back a couple of days later. Yeah, so it would have been on a different plane.
And also, something I really noticed in this latter half of the second season act is what we're talking about. Who knows what's going on there? But that whiteboard that's on the fridge? We never see anyone write any messages on there.
No, but there's always a message.
Messages and it's always something like, "Where is Donnie?"
Yeah.
Frank was here, going to get beer, and that's all written in weird, spooky letter. And there's another message on there. It's like this is sort of a little, almost a spiritual message board that gives direction and interest. But it's really cool, this end sequence, because we get "Love Will Tear Us Apart" is the song there, and then that gets changed over to being "Mad World."
Yeah.
Which I find it kind of funny, and I find it kind of strange that song is used as a peaceful song for sweet dreams on a pillow. Like there's this mattress out of something, and they have that song slowed down, but they only have that funny kind of sad. But it's a mad world. They sort of cut out the fact that the song is it's the dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. It's not a sweet dream song. It's a dream about anxiety and how the world is a little bit crazy.
It is.
It's not the sort of thing you want to be sleeping to, but Donnie is following his little...
perfect for Donnie.
Donnie's following his chest spear, which again has Christ allusions, because Christ was evidently killed by Longinus and his spear, the spear of destiny, into his chest, and that was like his fate. So that's what killed Christ. On the crucifix. Anyway, so that's another thing I picked up this viewing here, where he's talking to the science teacher, and he says it's like a spear in the chest.
Yeah,
and science teacher's like, oh, that's a bit confronting imagery. What do you mean by that? And then he continues on, and you kind of go, okay, that's what he's talking about. But again, he hits this dark point where you know that this Halloween party is going to be the wrap up. Something is going to happen.
Yeah.
And the music does it. It goes that all other sound effects disappear. We just get the song playing slowly as Donnie is sort of following his fate.
Well, Gretchen and him have a moment. Gretchen's revealed that her mum has disappeared because of the violent stepdad. They kind of have their moment. They have sex, which is what Donnie was saying, that he just wants to have as much sex as he can before he dies.
Yeah.
So
Which
he
apparently
kind
is
of...
once. So similar to me.
Similar to most teenage boys, you know, like you just want to have sex. Again, that's what I mean, this film is like puberty 101, really. And yeah, anyway, and so they have sex, and then you mentioned before him viewing her portal and seeing that it's the clouds, it's the sky opening up is obviously her end. So then that like urges him on to, hey, we've got to like get out of here. We've got to see Roberta Sparrow because we've got to stop this.
Yes.
You know, something's going to happen to Gretchen when the world ends, which he knows is now tomorrow, isn't it?
Within minutes.
Yeah, within minutes. So they fang it off, very ET style. You notice that scene
on their bikes,
like the bikes and the torches. It's
But that's
very
more realistic. Like when
Yeah.
I was a teenager, I didn't get a car until I was like 20 or something.
Yeah.
Like all these kids with 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds with cars.
And I mean, Donnie and that, I think they're 16. Like, they're not really
they've
car
got,
age.
they've got to be like sort of 16. Yeah. I mean, he drives the car later on. The thing, like he can.
Yeah,
drive.
but I think he just, he just takes that, doesn't he?
But he's done that before though. He must have, because the first time you jump in a car, automatic or not, you can't drive.
You don't know what you're doing.
You don't
Anyway.
slide past.
Doesn't matter. Sorry, details.
See,
So they do take off. It's a very ET style. They get to the Roberta Sparrow's place, and then he kind of is connecting those dots. So he's like, oh, Salador. You know, Drew Barrymore wrote on the thing, Salador. And that's the thing. Throughout this whole film, there's been moments that, like the flooding and the cinema and that, it's like, are we, you know, is he being told what to do, or is he deciding what to do? It's that question of fate, isn't he? So he's like, oh, Salador. So they go in looking for Roberta. They can't find her. Seth Rogen, his dodgy 20-year-old mate that shouldn't be in high school, suddenly attack him, come out onto the road again, throw Gretchen down. This is his chance, you know, to actually kill Donnie, which I don't think he actually wants to kill Donnie, but
he's
just like, you know, he's a tough guy. He's like, you know, finally we're having a battle and I'm on top of you, you know, like I'm going to get you down. And then with that, there's a car lights coming towards them. So the others kind of all take off because they think it's a cop, blah, blah, blah. They sort of stand up, they're ready to go. And this car comes fanging around. And of course, Roberta Sparrow has walked out in the road, which is what she always does, and causes the car to swerve, and in swerving runs over Gretchen.
Oh yeah, that would have been. It's quite unpleasant, really. 'Cause she's just lying there on the ground, and the car just drives totally.
And Roberta just then like walks back in the house, which again implies as well, like what does Roberta Sparrow know about all the time, fate, destiny? Is that she been waiting for that moment her whole life?
She's in this time loop too, where she goes and checks the letter,
just constantly.
And in fact, Donnie sends her the letter finally.
Yeah.
So the car screeches up, and this is where it all becomes clear to Donnie, because then out pops Frank with his costume on, he's holding the mask, and Donnie pulls the gun, shoots Frank in the eye, because we know that. And like that's, you know, we're talking about fast moving metal through water, and then we've got a bullet going through the eye. It's kind of like that's an opening portal.
But then it's also right, like fate versus destiny versus choice, doesn't it? Like he shot him when he was told that when he was shown that he'd be shot in the eye.
Yes, I know.
So he could have stopped that.
But he could have.
But he doesn't.
He didn't. And that was the point the science teachers saying, that if you can see where it's going, then you get to choose not to.
Yeah.
And then Donnie's like all confused, like, but what if God wants you to do that?
Yeah.
or has made you to do that. But yeah, this is the ending. This is the confrontation then with himself, isn't it? And this is why it's a slightly different Act 3 to what you're going to see in other places, because he doesn't make a plan to go and rescue Morpheus, for example. And, that's a really obvious, Act 3 finale is, yes, okay, so I'm going to need lots of guns. We're going to go in and we'll do this.
Yeah, but but it's the same. Sorry, it is the same, because in that, Neo goes, we need to save Morpheus because he's more important than me. But then in being so savior-like and saving Morpheus, he proves that he is actually the one, right? And it's the same here with Donnie. Donnie is Donnie is like realized he's just done the fate. So therefore, if he allows himself to, to sacrifice himself, he then, it's that last challenge for him, isn't it? Because that's what I mean. Like when I watched it this time, I realized that in that last moment, he could have decided, no, you know what? Stuff it. Gretchen can die. I'm going to go off and do my own thing for the rest of my life.
Well, I was more pointing out that you're looking for the Act 3 startup where it's like, there's my goal. He doesn't have.
No, he doesn't have
he's
that.
He's just like, we've got to go. Like Frank's out there somewhere. We've got to go to Roberta and
sort of figure this out.
There's kind of there's not like Frank.
There's not an action plan.
He's not going to the bottle shop to intercept Frank.
Yeah.
It's just, and then when he gets there, that's when we realise that this is what the struggle is.
Yeah,
is that he just
that's correct.
He shot Frank. He didn't have to shoot Frank, but he kind of did because of his relationship with Gretchen. And so he shot Frank, and now he's left. Well, now what do? Do I follow the inevitable and die? And this is the whole what does it mean for a teenager for the world to end?
Yeah.
And for him, he had found someone who cared about him.
Yeah.
And that had ended. He just shot a guy in the head. He was already in trouble. Like he's going to prison. Like that's just what's going to happen. Or a mental institute or something.
Yeah.
His world will end.
Yeah.
That will be the end of the world for him. Like, and will he, as a teenager, you don't recover. You don't think you'll recover from that. It usually turns out you do because most teenagers don't go around shooting people. Most teenagers have at least one incident where they think, I can't recover from this.
Yeah.
And like a week later, they're back at sports doing whatever, but because luckily teenagers are fairly bouncy. So I do like that. What is the end of the world for him? And so what are his choices there? The end of that world or travel back in time, let himself get crushed, but then Gretchen's alive and all these other things. And, does he then get to be God?
Yeah.
He's not alone in his death.
Yeah.
Because he has touched all of these lives.
Yeah.
And he is taking that with him.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? But I think it actually is that same. I didn't even thought of it, but it is that same. You've talked a lot about it, like get into the third act, enacting the plan. He doesn't really have the plan, and that's what I think you're saying. But then at the end of it, that final challenge is that, well, no shit, I've just done what the fate said that I would do, right? Like I've just done maybe what God wanted me to do, but that's not what I wanted to do, which is shoot Frank. So then now what do? Well, the only option I've got is I could go back in time. It's like the final act, right? It's the final leap of faith. And it's got to be a leap of faith as well.
That twist which challenges him to learn.
Yeah.
Because had he just continued the way he was heading, he would have shot Frank. He would have gone off and maybe just been upset. Yeah. Gone to prison
for 30 years.
Because that would be him not learning anything.
Yeah.
But he's come in contact with all these people and he's developed and grown.
Yeah, and that's why
he's left with that choice.
Yeah. And he doesn't wake up his sister, he kisses her.
Yeah.
She's like passed out on the couch. And he just kind of like gives her a kiss.
Yeah.
So that is him because early, in the first scene, he's arguing with her.
Yeah.
So he's kind of like, no, I'm doing this to sort of, the only way out of this is if I sacrifice myself. And that's the thing. That's the climax of this film is him deciding to sacrifice himself, which is the ultimate protagonist antagonist. It's like pushing the antagonist off the cliff. It's he has to sacrifice himself.
Dropping off Nakatomi Tower.
Yeah, and that is the anti-hero. Like, the anti-hero has to destroy themselves.
Yeah, that part. Yes.
Yeah. And in this, he literally has to then sit there on the bed. And the reason why we know he's okay about it, he's not there sweating bullets. He's laughing.
He's laughing.
He's resolved.
The thing I love about this ending is it's easy for an ending where the hero kills themselves to be sad.
Yeah.
But I came out of it, and this is why, with the first time I watched, I came out a little bit confused, because I was like, so he ended his life by choice, but I don't feel that was a bad choice. Like, I feel
it's the right choice.
I feel happy, and and you get this little montage of how he has affected, because as the time travel book sort of says that when the tangent universe ends,
some people will be
then people that he's affected will have some lingering memory of what happened there.
Yeah.
And that's where you go through and you see the psychiatrist finds a bit of spirituality.
Yes.
Which I didn't pick up the first couple of times I watched this film, but when she says, "Oh, you're not an atheist, you're an agnostic," and she explains what it is, she's actually talking about herself.
Yes.
And so when she wakes up, she gets that feeling of there is something divine. Is there, or isn't there? Like, where previously I think she was a little bit sort of bitter, a bit washed out of the world.
Yeah.
And of course, Charita smiles.
Sort of smiles.
She goes, "Oh, everything will be okay."
Yeah.
She gets that last thing, and of course, we see each of the
And
people.
Frank holds his eye.
Yeah, Frank said is like looking at his designs and so forth, and he's holding his eye, and he's wondering. Yeah, you can imagine he's evaluating his life. Like he had some existential crisis.
And the same with Patrick Swayze.
Patrick Swayze wakes up crying, and it's just, I don't want to say he's had like a redemption, but it's nice to see that he's got some sort of a punishment there, where his guilt, his shame, he's
maybe he's going to stop all that.
He's woken up and realised that he's actually harming people.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't. It wasn't made out that he was a kiddie fiddler, but he was a distributor of child pornography, which is pretty dastardly, really.
It is.
And you got to wonder, is him crying enough? But maybe he could, I like to think that he hands himself in. He turns himself in at that point from out of guilt.
Anyway, then we get Gretchen rides along. We've got the big scene of them pulling off the engine out of the house. Donnie's
and don't
sister,
the FCC guys now get reframed as Men in Black?
They do.
Which I sort of know at the start, but they still look a bit governmenty. But in this one here, the way they're kind of, they're looking around, they've got their glasses on, you're going, this is a group of Men in Black come to cover up.
But did you notice that even when the first one, they had the guy in the space suit, hosing things, it looked a bit suspicious. And then even like they come, they go, "Oh, we want to talk to you privately.
Yes.
Come over here, sign this agreement." So it was kind of implied a bit Men in Black conspiracy.
Well, I think at the start though, it was a bit more like,
What's going on?
An aeroplane that we're supposed to ensure the safety of, but we can't explain just about killed your child.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, we
Whereas
don't
in
really
the end,
know.
it's like, okay, this mystery jet that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
If they check the serial numbers on it, that jet still has its engine and is sitting on the runway.
That would be a Men in Black.
So
moment.
it's a nice little scene there that you sort of go, oh, actually, that was the Men in Black coming in here.
But basically, Gretchen rocks up on her bike, and there's another little kid, and Donnie's being wheeled out. He's deceased. The dad's upset. The sister's upset. The mum's in shock. That's the best way to put it in my work. And then Gretchen just kind of waves.
Yeah,
and the boy says, "Do you know? Oh, I think she says, who's died?" And he goes, "Oh, it's my neighbour Donnie Darko." And she goes, "Oh, okay."
Yeah,
and they just kind of wait.
No.
Yeah, don't know. So it didn't affect her, and that's just it. Roll credits. The end. Yeah,
I know. It's really, I really liked the crossing over here from. Yeah, this sort of psychological teen coming of age, but then into this metaphysical reality, fate, versus free choice. And was Donnie being led by fate, or did he actually make his choice,
Yeah.
choosing to follow and see where it led? And the music in this also, like this,
The music's
those
great.
music montage scenes, it really gave me that real, I know, whether it's the nostalgia or there's something about those scenes that made me feel warm and fuzzy or dreamy, and kind of remembering my own teenage years.
Yeah, I mean, I Was Standing, You Were Here, the Head Over Heels montage, Love Will Tear Us Apart, The Mad World. I mean, all of those songs, they're all lyrically connected to those scenes. They're all emphasized. They're very loud montage scenes. It's what I said before as well, like footage is sped up, slowed down. Things are emphasized, things are not emphasized. It's a bizarre little world he creates in those montages, Kelly. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, I think we're going to have to ask the audience to let us know their thoughts. Was this a spiritual birth, death, rebirth story? Is this the story of Easter? Is this...
No.
Was this purely and totally ruined by the director's cut? Or was it enhanced? Was Roberta Sparrow in on it? Did she have some insight? Because she wrote that book to start with. So where did she get that knowledge from? And how?
Well, yeah, I mean, did she see the future? I mean, this is what confused me. I mean, was she walking to and from the letterbox waiting for Donnie's letter? Or did she already have a letter sent to her? It's that part I don't know, but it's interesting, isn't it? Like, when did she see something?
And was that something to do with Donnie's dad's comment about being crazy?
Yeah.
Did he have some memory of Roberta's tangent universe? Because Roberta wrote this book. She must have been involved in a time travel incident.
Yeah.
And, Donnie's dad said, they used to go up there and try and nick stuff. She had a big gem collection or something or other. And, so, and then he made that comment that he was crazy. Was that kind of his memories of her tangent universe, and that he kind of finds unusual? So let us know, because this movie, I'm going to be watching it again.
Yeah.
That can be. In fact, I'm going to hunt down the non-director's cut version.
You should.
And watch that, and I'm sure my wife and I will find more things to talk about.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that at his first feature film out of the gate, young age, 26. That's pretty young, and it's such a complex theme laden, but it's not preachy and heavy. Like, you're not sort of going, oh, get on with it.
No, and I mean, there's these moments in there thematically, it's like we've talked about it where you've got this sci-fi element, but it's also very much, is it Donnie's, like we were talking about before, the perception of Donnie as a teenage boy, like it really captures that. The issue of him wanting sex, the issue of him, like, is he mentally disturbed or is he just a teenage boy? Like, I don't know, like, it's bizarre, isn't it? And they talk about that. Then there's lots of, like, you're just saying there, like, as a director, there's foreshadowing. I mean, even in the dialogue about, what's your name? Donnie Darko sounds like a superhero. He is the superhero at the end. He's both the hero and the antagonist. I mean, I'm always like, wow, that's a pretty big pull off. It's a lot easier to just have a bad guy, and that's not present in this film, and then to subtly have him do good things, save the cat, Sharita, have him be very logical, rational, when other people are not. Like, it's very subtle. It's very clever. Also, like, how good is Frank? I mean, the bunny. I mean, that bunny, when you first watch it, like, it's a bit freaky.
Oh, it's
and then you watch it again, you're kind of like, that bunny detail is awesome. And when they, like, zoom out and it's heading towards the climax, Donnie's got it. He's, like, drawn. I mean, it's supposed to be that Donnie has drawn him, and he's got him on the calendar, a picture of Frank, and the calendar's in the picture.
Yes.
So it's one of those pictures of, like, the picture in the picture in the picture kind of thing, which again is kind of like that spiraling effect. Did you notice as well in the plane engine there's that spiral, like the hypnotic spiral? The hypnosis things, the conversations in this film, the dialogue of like that Christina Applegate thing. I mean, that's such an 80s iconic moment. Married with Children.
Married with Children, and most of the jokes I didn't care about because I'm not a middle-aged man who feels trapped under the thumb. And I thought Peggy was kind of hot.
Yeah,
but
me too.
But yeah, as a teenager, you're thinking, what, he's got a job and a house, he's got a hot wife who wants to have sex with him all the time. Like, what the hell's wrong with this guy? And then, then
throwing Christina Applegate.
I've been watching for her for a while.
And her short little dresses, right? But I mean, that's the thing. The music, the soundtrack of this film is just incredible. Like, it's a really rich soundtrack. You and I were just talking about this a couple of weeks ago, that it's like those films that the soundtracks themselves are their own stories, like you could take this soundtrack and just listen to it. Like that's the kind of soundtrack it is.
Actually, my wife and I watching Twilight. The soundtrack to that is remarkably good.
Okay, there you go.
Watch it again for the soundtrack. You get just these sort of sound montage bits. And it's really good because I was here in the studio doing stuff on the computer, and I heard my wife. She's recently watched the Twilight film about 3 times now and listened to the audiobook, and so I was just hearing the soundtrack, not even hearing what's going on.
Yeah,
and I was thinking, I've got to go and see this. Like, what movie is this? This is really good. And I saw it was Twilight, and so I sat down and watched a couple of the movies with her. And I really noticed again that's got some scenes in it which are just the music, and again it's thematically done, and it's like sweeping images, and there's visuals of werewolves running through the forest and stuff. Similar sort of, obviously a little bit more mainstream, but again that strong use of soundtrack.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, so let us know what you thought about the narrative, and did we miss anything? We were a bit all over the place tonight, a bit like Donnie Darko. But why not? We can be a bit ADHD about it.
So much I still want to talk about it. But, hey.
And that's the whole point of it. So what about the classic ladder, Surrey? Where would you suggest someone watches Donnie Darko in our list of classic films? For me... Yeah. I'm going to put it right in the middle on my list of classic films. I think you should watch it. I had it Alien, and then I had Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and I think if Donnie goes in between those two, to me that would be such an interesting viewing experience. Like if tonight you watched Alien and tomorrow night you watched Donnie and the next night you watched Invasion of the Body Snatchers, that would be a trilogy that would just blow your mind away. I think
I would like to match Donnie Darko up with Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Because they're both
in the 80s.
Fate, cycling scene, music is...
He talks about Back to the Future in the film. This is a nice little nod.
He mentions the DeLorean,
Yeah. So because it's such a futuristic film.
Yeah. But I think they sort of plays off each other in that sense.
Yeah, both time travel.
Time travel, they're both looping to change their fate or to seal their fate.
Both fate ones,
it's just, one's a little bit darker than the other one.
Yeah.
But they're both very satisfying to watch.
All right, let us know what you think and where you would put it on your ladder. So what about science? What science aspect? This film has got science, it's got religion, it's got the debate, it's got fate. What do you want to focus on?
Have you ever heard of... okay, well, there's a couple things here. One of them is something called... alexithymia.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Alexithymia. So I'm sure you've probably heard of, for example, face blind. People can be face blind. They have trouble identifying people based on facial features.
Yes.
And then you have quite commonly with the autism spectrum is emotion blindness. That they can't read social cues from physical actions.
Yeah, right.
It's just quite consciously able to say, yes, that's a frown. And then they, could probably go through frown. I have learnt that people say that they're feeling angry when they're frowning.
Yeah.
I suppose this person must be angry.
Yeah.
And this is, no, they're actually deep in thought. It's not that sort of frown. Oh, I got that wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, well. But alexithymia is the inability to interpret and understand your own emotional physiology.
Right.
Yes, so this is the case.
Just sounds like every single human on this planet.
No. People can be confused about why they're feeling love or why they're feeling some sort of positive pull or something.
Yeah.
Sometimes emotions can be confusing. But this is more the case, as this one patient describes it, as being he was talking with a girl that he liked and his heart was beating fast and his face was flushed,
He's-
and he didn't know why he was like short of breath, and it made him angry and afraid, and he ran away.
Fair enough. I
And
would
he
do
said-
that too.
And after, he's had some therapy and things, and
Yeah.
he's realised that he says actually what he's found is a number of times, he's had like butterflies in his stomach when he's like meeting someone,
Yeah.
and he's interpreted that as being hungry. And so rather than being nervous or something,
Yeah.
and so happiness is misinterpreted, depression is sadness is misinterpreted. It just like why am I so sluggish, and
Yeah, right.
so it's that the body is expressing the physical reactions that you'd expect, of excitement or nervousness or happiness, anger, fear, but it doesn't link to the concept in his mind.
Yeah.
And there are similar situations where a person is unable to, for example, write words that they can say.
Yep.
In fact, I think an even better one is I can visualize a picture in my head very clearly.
Yep.
A lot of people can't, but I can.
Yeah.
And I feel like I should be able to draw it,
Yep.
but it doesn't happen. Like
Yeah,
the
that happens to
connection
me.
It's not there. It's like
Yeah.
I try and draw it, and it's just like looks like a child's scribble. I just look at it and go, "No, it's so clear in my head." And that lack of connection is the same sort of thing. So they have something physically happen there. Their body says, you're meant to be feeling happy about this, and that it just doesn't. Like their brain's going, "Why does my tummy feel funny?" And like this is a bit odd. I'm a bit. And usually he said it made him anxious and panicky and scared and makes him run away.
Yeah, right.
Or say bad, like angry things to people.
Yeah.
Because he's actually happy to meet someone,
Yeah.
but the feelings of happiness have left him confused, and he, fight or flight. He goes, "Fuck you, I'm leaving." And the other person's left confused, going, "What the hell?"
I thought we were having sandwiches.
I thought this was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought we were doing a podcast. I mean, geez.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, the poor guy's had a couple of divorces
Yeah.
and things because he was able to fake it for a while.
Yeah.
Because he would
right.
like someone, intellectually and consciously, he knew I want to be around.
Play the
this person.
game.
And
Play
so he'd
up.
fake it, but then he just after a while he just couldn't. He's
Yeah.
just like, I just don't know what is going on here. I don't recognize the feelings in you, and when you talk about feeling happy about things, I don't know what that means. I don't know.
Sounds
what it
sucky
is.
because they're not like getting the feelings that we all get. That
Yeah.
and then understanding. I mean, like that's the thing. You can have that exact feeling, butterflies, and it does affect your performance of. I'm going for a job interview, and suddenly I'm like so nervous that then you can't put the sentence together that you'd want to put together or something. And even when I did the Harold the Plumber thing the other night, like because there was a lot of. Like it was me putting the pressure on myself of like being a bit nervous talking about it to people that maybe I'm not quite putting sentences together like I could if I'm just having a conversation with someone.
Oh, isn't it always great? You sit there and
You're like, you could write the best sentence in the world.
I will
but
write some amazing paragraphs and I read them back to myself and go, "Oh, that's really cool."
Yeah,
if
yeah.
I try to say that out loud, it's
I
like,
know, especially on the spur of the moment, you're just trying to thank someone. And then afterwards, of course, like my wife's like, "You didn't do that, and you didn't do that, and you didn't do that." And you're like,
yeah, I get that.
I know.
Why didn't you say thank you?
Why didn't you say thank you to that person? Yeah, I
Well,
should have.
at that launch
but
party,
anyway,
she made me memorize certain people I definitely had to thank.
Yeah.
And so I was going through that list the whole time. So I had to make sure I thanked, you and Cherie and Jenny and,
Yeah.
all these, because you don't want to get to the point where you say, yeah, thanks everyone who's involved. And it's like someone going, man, I did a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm just everyone who's involved.
Yeah.
Great.
That's
So,
right.
but-
yeah.
But anyway,
So that's the thing. Like you can have that, but you're still, is it just a performance thing that may be more practice and more experience and trying to work through it? You would get better.
Yeah.
And I think most people fall into that category. Like if you practice all your speeches and you said it time and time again, like you just said in your head, listed off 3 or 4 things, you can achieve that, right? Like you still might not be Eddie Maguire, whatever, great presenter person out there, Prime Minister worthy, whatever, but you can definitely tick off a lot of those boxes and come across normally.
Are you
Whereas
saying Eddie Maguire is Prime Minister?
I don't know.
Or are you
No,
just listing other people.
he
who
could
might
be
also
Prime Minister, right? Like he'd be in the same category as our Prime Ministers here. Like,
whatever that means.
whatever that means to anyone out there.
Sports,
I don't know. Kisses babies, that kind of stuff. I don't know.
See, the courts have told him to stop doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. All politicians should not be allowed to do that.
Kiss your own baby. That's
I don't have babies anymore, but it'd be like, always would have been one of those interesting things if I was at a shopping centre and a politician came up with the film crew to kiss my baby. I'd be like, fuck off.
Paul Keating came over. I would have gone like,
Paul,
what?
I know.
Well, back off there. Well, what's wrong, you thug?
You want to fight? He was a prime minister, but the ones that we got these last 10 years, who knows? But anyway, so yeah, I mean, what you're saying is no, it's more of an actual condition where he literally doesn't feel the correct feeling.
I'm trying to remember why I went into this for this movie. Because what I was really looking for, and the other thing I was going to talk about...
What's the connection, sorry?
The connection, this one here, I can't remember.
Everything connects to Donnie Darko.
Well, yeah, his therapy sessions where he's asking about feelings and so forth. Because I was looking at this, theory of the alternative... I did not a many worlds theory of quantum, which is we've spoken about before. This is more like if you play the universe backwards, back to the Big Bang... but continue going backwards, you end up with a reverse parallel universe that expands out in the negative time direction.
Yeah, but I could. But also, this film could just be that idea of a tangent. So it's like, like every fork decision we make, there could be just a version of that, right?
Well, that's like many worlds quantum thing.
Yeah, and there's this life that you've created, but then you'd just be like, oh, I didn't catch the 7:05 train, I caught the 7:15 train, but then that 7:15 train, someone jumps in front of it and it falls over and we all die.
But what I do like about this playing time backwards to the Big Bang and earlier is it introduces an interesting idea regarding matter and antimatter and black and dark matter. So there's 3 neutrinos which are all left-hand spin, as it's called. Why it's left-hand, it's pretty arbitrary. But basically they have a left-hand spin and they don't have a symmetrical partner with a right-hand spin as opposed to all the other particles around the place.
Yeah, right.
So they're lacking symmetry. But with this mirrored universe, it allows for a sterile neutrino, which does have the right-hand spin. It also allows for the other ones, but they would, by their nature, would have disappeared. We'd never see them because they were lost billions of years in time. But this sterile neutrino was thought to have been discovered in 2016 during a series of experiments in the Antarctic where they recorded an unusual particle being emitted from the Earth, which shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And it happened at the 480 photon electron volts. So what it is? PeV, which is the point that would have been predicted for this particular neutrino, which would support a parallel mirrored inverse universe of our own.
Right.
I thought that was pretty interesting. However,
That is interesting.
As the guy who wrote the paper said, he says, every cosmological theory is allowed to have one tooth fairy element. Where you just have like a wave of magic wand and one thing is just sort of magicked in there.
Yeah.
His theory has about 3.
Yeah.
So he doesn't think it's all that good.
Yeah.
It's a bit wobbly. But I went with the alexithymia because I thought it was a little bit more... Donnie Darko is a psychological thing and he has trouble expressing himself. And, it sort of struck me as being very interesting.
I think so. And I mean, you could question whether this film is time travel and whether it is just psychological fantasy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he wakes up. He has this massive dream of everything.
You noticed, do you remember at the start, the reason why I say this, right, is at the start, he's stopped taking his medication. Right? That's that argument around the dinner table.
Yes.
His sister says, oh, you've stopped, dobs him in.
Yes.
His mum goes and sees him. He gives his mum flack. So he hasn't been taking his medication. Resentfully, he takes his medication And what happens? He sees Frank.
Yes.
So another version of this film, or like a reading into this film, is the fact that the medication is Frank. You know, like it is like, yeah, it's just a delusion.
Admitted that she'd been prescribing him placebo.
That happens later, yeah.
The whole time.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's...
But anyway.
Before we continue on any further...
I know, because we can go into it a whole nother way.
Let's say, give us a bit of a review on some of these things. Some of these hosting sites, Apple, Spotify, Google, whatever, because it does allow other people to more easily find us.
That's correct.
And if you do like listening to some of our stuff or all of it, everyone loves listening to all of it.
I know.
Especially the bits where, you know, I fail at talking.
And, you know, the 3.5 hour episodes.
3.5 hour marathon. Yeah, so we're trying to keep this one down a bit, but give us a bit of a rating. Check us out on spacebrains.com.au.
Definitely.
I don't really do Twitter. Twitter's a toxic cesspool of hate, so I don't tend to go there very much these days.
No.
But get us on Instagram, Facebook, where all the old people hang out.
Yeah.
Stuff gets chucked on TikTok as well because, you know, we're newfangled.
Yes.
In the new year, we're probably going to have some video content of some sort.
Yeah, we will.
We're not sure exactly what that's going to be, but
there'll be more and more coming.
It'll
anyway.
be great. And let us know what you think
Definitely.
about this movie and about everything else. And there's one last thing we need to know is what is next episode?
It's a indie European or British background sci-fi film called Cosmos. They had a very interesting distribution way of getting this film out. These guys, it's totally independent and a bit guerrilla, a bit of an interesting marketing story to make a film. Like we said about Donnie Darko, you know, like Richard Kelly couldn't sell it to anyone. This film, very similar. These guys used everything in their back pocket and they did a bit of an interesting distribution model. I can't wait to watch this film to begin with and then also kind of delve a bit deeper into that marketing strategy. I think it's something very interesting. If you're a filmmaker, writer, it's another pathway of making a film.
Yeah, and if you're a fan of science fiction films, it's an interesting way of finding new films.
Correct, yeah.
And new talents.
Yeah, not just the
guys are going to go to
That's
next.
right. And not just that traditional model, you know, of Hollywood films
so
or
it's
whatever.
Cosmos. I'm not sure where you're going to find it, but if you search for Cosmos...
Yeah, it is available out there, isn't it?
It is available.
And with Christmas, of course, we are taking a bit of a break. Cosmos episode will air on the 15th of January.
Until then, see ya.
Bye-bye.